Am I live? Welcome to the main event podcast, my friends. I am Minty Best, and this is Wager Talk UFC betting expert, Kyle Anthony. Kyle, how are you today?
I'm doing all right. It was a interesting night. We'll get into a little bit what happened last night. But, hey, we got 3 cards. Finally, the last legs here. A lot of betting going on. So it's been a good run.
Let's do it. This Saturday, May 16th, we've got UFC on ESPN 8 with the heavyweight main event being Alistair Overeem and Walt taking place in none other than Jacksonville, Florida, the current fight island as of now, I would say. Today, Kyle will give 3 free plays breaking down 2 fighter styles, how he capped it, why he likes one fighter over the other, and of course, conclusion to finding value in the bet. Kyle is an 86% winner in 2020 and on an 18-2 run, increasing clients' bankrolls by over 40% return. He's got 3 4% best bets loaded for Saturday night on wagertalk.com, so go check it out. Last night, Kyle went 1-1 on his plays, cashing in on Simone, losing on OSP. Not going to lie, that was kind of ugly on OSP's part. What are your overall thoughts? Not that I need to ask you, I can just tell by your head shaking, on last night's play.
Well, the good news. Simone, he did his thing. He went out there. The big thing was going to be his wrestling. The price was really good on him. I really thought, anywhere in the minus 150, minus 160, even above that, just the way that he is. Borg got good power, but he really just the reach and the level changing for Simon is just very, very good. So he did a great job there, got us to cash in. I know a lot of people across the board were taking him, so it was good to see a lot of people cashing. But OSP, this was probably one of the worst bets that I have made in a long time. Right away, you saw just how he was kind of just dancing around that first round. And then he just kind of stuck to that the entire fight. It just didn't make sense. Even when he was throwing some combinations in there, he started to land, and then even Rothwell wasn't even throwing punches at times, just kind of walking him down, and he still just wasn't firing a punch. So I don't know what was going on there. Horrible fight. He dropped him at the end. When I heard the split decision, when I heard they announced it was going to be a split decision, I thought we'd maybe squeak one out there, but it didn't happen. It was a horrible. Yeah. So 1-1, but what are we going to do?
It's okay. Got to bounce back. So before we get into your free plays, what were your takeaways from there being no crowds in the last 2 UFC events? I personally didn't mind. I kind of liked it.
Yeah, it's so different. The one thing is, I've been to so many UFC events, but the one thing is it's the energy there. You got the crowd. Everyone's excited. Everyone's going. It's constant cheering and there's so much action going on, but it's a different environment when you got this. It's kind of, you can hear the punches. The fact you can hear the impact of leg kicks and what how brutal it is. It takes a lot of it away when you hear the announcers and they're kind of cheering and these kind of things. But when you can hear just them walking around on the mat and there's noise and even the announcers were saying that the fighters could hear, they could hear them, which is a weird thing.
Do you think that affects the way they fight when they can hear the announcers and stuff like that?
Well, they even had Daniel Cormier even said during it, I should talk lower, because they were literally right in front of them. And he was saying, hey, he should move his leg here. He should do this. And, you kind of hear those things. And then they even have, which I don't know if anybody saw it, but this morning they had at the very end of the Glover versus Anthony Smith fight, Glover's on top of him, and this is, we'll get into that later, but this was just a beating. And even at the end, Glover had said to him, I'm sorry, this is a part of the job. Like, you hear him saying that, and Anthony Smith is like, I know. And he just kept.
God.
So those kind of things you normally don't pick up camera, mics don't pick up. So it was interesting, but I think it's good for now, but I need to get back to the craziness of the crowd.
I got it. I thought you were going to talk about the where Teixeira was handing not Teixeira. The tooth to the ref, and I was like, ew.
The fact that he's getting like beaten up and he picks up his tooth as he's getting beat up and hands it to him, like, hey, he's like, I'm going to need this. So, it was pretty. Knowing with these things, again, you don't pick up those tiny little details, but it was an interesting night.
It was so interesting. All right. Well, the first fight we'll discuss an undercard fight on UFC on ESPN 8. Nate Landwehr -104 versus Darren Elkins -114. In this bout, you've got 2 fighters both coming off multiple losses in a row. How do you factor that into your capping?
Well, I think that the one thing for sure, just in a general sense, is a lot, just the betting market in general, when fighters are coming off a couple losses, it always just seems that that casual bettor is going to be really starting to gravitate towards the other fighter. In this situation, both of them have a couple losses. We'll talk about it in a second. But in a general sense, the market does move that way. So I think that it's very interesting when you take a look at it, that it presents value. And it really is going to come down to who they lost to, how they lost, what happened. A lot of different things go into that. So I think if you just go up a guy that, hey, he lost 3 in a row, and again, your average bettor is going to do that, I think it provides value. If you really dive into how it happened, why it happened, the level of competition that they had, I think that's where, you're going to find more value in.
Yeah, definitely. So no doubt Elkins is durable, but does he have the striking to win at this even money price? Break it down for us, Kyle.
Well, I mean, the one thing here, you've got, Elkins is a great wrestler. Elkins is a great wrestler. He's a durable guy, like you were saying. He can take the big punches, keep moving forward. And if you've never seen him fight, it's like basically like in those movies where a zombie keeps getting shot, but he just keeps going forward. Oh. That's Darren Elkins. If you go back to see the last couple of fights, that's what he does. But the big part about it also is that, the last 3 fights that Elkins had, he's coming off 3 straight losses, but he lost to Lamas, Hall, and Volkanovski. Volkanovski is the current champion right now who beat up Max Holloway. That's a huge step up. You've also got Lamas. Lamas is a great vet, a good counter wrestler, which is something, again, a path to victory for Elkins. Couldn't really find a rhythm in that fight, lost that fight. And then against Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall is an elite grappler. And in that fight, Elkins just couldn't get going. He just could not get going because he was scared of the level change. Although he's got good wrestling, he was scared of those level changes. And Hall was able to just kind of pick him apart through that fight. And then you look on the other side, and you've got Landwehr. And with this guy, he's sloppy striking. And again, the price here on both of these is even. You've got a pick 'em price on these two guys. And just break it down, it just pushes you one way. And again, the competition level is huge. And you've got a guy that fought one time in the UFC, and he got knocked out in the first round. And then prior to that, he was in XFC, which XFC is a very low-level organization. And he beat a guy that was 5-4 and didn't really do much with it. He went up against the cage, kind of grappled him around a little bit. Not much really happened in that fight, and he ended up getting that the loss, and then there was the victory there. But the overall point of this is that this is a monster step down for Darren Elkins. I mean, Elkins is, at this point, he has fought top-level guys from the beginning, and this is a really, really good spot to take Elkins here. And I think this line is completely off to me. I think this is a spot where Elkins should be a minus 130. He should be a minus 135. I think it's absolutely in that spot because there's so many paths to victory here for Elkins also. It's just the wrestling. And the big thing that Nate does when he goes forward is he just kind of stands there against the cage. That goes right into what Elkins does. He's very good in the grappling side of things, keeping it very, very dirty, making sure that he's doing his dirty boxing, the grappling, the elbows. He can level change. There's a lot of things that I like about Elkins here. Again, you go back and kind of to what we were saying, you go back to the fact that he lost a couple fights in a row, and that starts to push the line to make it a pick'em. But when you look at who he fought, how he fought, who did he beat, who did the other opponent beat, to me, this is way off to me. I like Elkins here as a free play here. I think that the money should be going on him. I don't know that there's any good side here to take a Landwehr. I don't really see much. So here, I like Elkins, the zombie, and I'm telling you, if no one's seen this guy fight, you should take a look. But I think it's a good play there.
I will definitely be watching out for that. Elkin it is. The next fight we'll discuss is Krzysztof Jotko minus 160 versus Eryk Anders plus 138. Now in this fight, again, you believe the competition level each has faced differs. How does that factor into capping this fight?
I mean, it's the same thing again. And again, I'm kind of hitting on it on back-to-back fights. But this is another situation that I did want to touch on because it shows where you should be betting some of these fighters. And you've got Jotko, who at this point, he's a minus 160. Again, I think that line's off. But a minus 160, you've got him here. And you've seen over his career that he has beaten those lower level fighters, and he's looked pretty good. But again, lower level fighters. And then he had stepped up 3 middle of the road fighters, guys that are kind of, the journeyman kind of fighters. They win a couple, they lose a couple. They just can't get that higher elite, the status for a title run. and he went 0-3 against those fighters. And then most recently, he went 2-0. So now if you take a look at it, the time that you wanted to bet Jotko was after those 3 losses. Once he had those 3 losses, and then he took a monster step down against back-to-back debuting UFC fighters, those are the times you want to take a guy that is taking the step down, and he's supposed to beat these guys. These are not the guys that, again, debuting fighters in UFC do absolutely terrible. There's just overall, they don't do well, and they're kind of feeding back because a lot of times they give these UFC fighters, they kind of throw them into the mix. And sometimes they think they're ready, and sometimes they think that they're not ready. And in this spot, he wasn't. So for me, there, after 3 losses, that's where we bet Jotko. Now his price has gone up. Now he's beaten 2 lower level guys. It's at -160. I think it's a horrible price. Win or lose for Jotko, I think it's a terrible price overall. And then Anders is a guy who had 7 straight fights, and he's won or lost against middle of the road competition. So again, the line there absolutely has dictated off of just wins and losses and not who they've actually beat.
Interesting. All right. Well, with that said, how do these 2 fighters match up, and who are you wagering on?
So, I mean, I kind of, tip my hand already of kind of the side I kind of like, because to me here, I mean, I think this is a dog or pass situation.
Okay.
I just don't see a position that you could bet a guy like Jotko. Again, I mean, he is the kind of guy that does not have power. Not very good in the clinch. And you've got a guy like Eryk Anders. Eryk Anders is a great wrestler, has a lot of strength, and likes to be in the clinch. And he's got a lot of power as well. So he's the kind of guy that can bully a Jotko. And Jotko, again, he's got some ability, but you cannot, in my opinion, take a guy that just has not proven himself that he can go out there and beat these middle of the roads. Now, again, Eryk Anders is a guy that he can have some sloppy striking, and sometimes, he does mess up a little. He looks for the big bomb. But in a position like this, Jotko is going to look to come forward. I think that a +138, +140 price, somewhere in there, is a pretty good price on him. You can even look for the finish, too, because Anders is the kind of guy that's going to look for those big shots also. And again, in the clinch is going to be where most of this fight, I believe, is going to be taking place. So I like here Eryk Anders in this spot. I think it's a good spot for him. And again, I think this is dog or pass. I cannot see any positive way of paying up on a -160 range for a guy who just has not proven himself.
I like it. And lastly, we'll discuss the main event of the evening between Alistair Overeem and Walt Harris. Before we get into that, I'd like to discuss last night's main event between Anthony Smith and Glover Teixeira, which we kind of brushed up on earlier, but I certainly have some things to say because I had Teixeira to win on Yahoo Sports. I had a little Minty boost for the fight where they boost odds for the plays that I like. I did a long shot parlay, which included Dober to win, which, yes. OSP Russell to go the distance, which I was very surprised, and I think you were very surprised it went the distance, so that
yes,
completed
absolutely.
all rounds. Yeah, and then the last one I had was Teixeira by decision. Round 1 didn't look good. Round 2, I felt a little better, and 3 and 4, I was like, oh crap, like he's not going to last. But Smith is such a fighter, like he did not tap out. I was so surprised. I would have like cried as my teeth were falling out and just like tap out and be like, just send me to the hospital. Like that was such an exciting fight, but a painful loss for my parlay. But it was so close to cashing. I want to hear your thoughts on that fight.
Well, I mean, the big thing in that fight was everyone know that Anthony Smith is going to go forward and look for the big knockout. I mean, it's something he's done against, he's fought a lot of guys kind of aging. He's knocked out some guys that have kind of at the end of their career and, guys that have lost their chin. And the thing that even we have talked about, prior to the fight was that, it's going to be the grappling with Glover. And early, he weathered that storm. Glover kind of weathered that storm. And the price on him, he was the dog, and that was a nice price for him. But the thing that I thought was going to mostly happen was it was going to be more of a clinch game, a lot of takedowns for Glover. But the odd part was Glover was just lighting him up, standing and striking. And then oddly, in weird scenarios, he would kind of take him down. So, we were saying he may ride this out here. He may just ride it out on the ground and not get up and that kind of thing. And it kind of went back and forth. And then there was a point, it was just, by the 4th round, I mean, it did go into it was the 5th, right? It was the 5th round it ended. So,
it was the 5th round.
So the fourth round was pretty much at that point, it looked like that fight was over. I mean, it looked should have ended. They should have almost thrown in the towel. I mean, even Anthony Smith went back to the corner and even said, I don't have teeth. I'm losing my teeth. And they were like,
said, my
hey.
teeth are falling out. And I was like, what? Your teeth? Which ones? That's
right. And I think that was his thing to say, I don't want to fight anymore. I mean, there's a inside of you, it's a kind of a thing where you don't want to say, I'm done. I can't beat this guy. And I think even that's why the soundbite I talked about before was, Glover was kind of like, this is a job. Like, if they're not going to stop this fight, I have to keep beating you up kind of thing. But that just shows how tough he is. Smith is a warrior. I mean, he really went through a hell of a lot, but there was no point for him to go through all that damage. But you missed your parlay, the plus, was it 2,200? I mean, that was, I think you had a lot of people on your side cheering you on for that.
Even if they didn't. Holy crap.
Yeah. And even before we talked about, I'm like, the first one I like Dover. But I'm not sure about these other two going the distance, and you were minutes away from cashing that. But yeah, it was a crazy fight.
So close. Do you ever feel like maybe like you're a voodoo doll when you watch these fights? And like, I don't know, when Glover was like hitting Smith's ear, I was like, like my ear was.
Yes, I mean, especially even when they do like a groin shot or something. I think every male is like, oh my god. Yeah, so you feel their pain sometimes. You feel their pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that was a great fight, and but I didn't watch like half of it, but it's okay. Anyway, on to the main event for Saturday's card. Alistair Overeem plus 135 versus Walt Harris minus 155. How do you see Saturday night's main event going down, and who is your replay?
So this fight here, I mean, I kept going back and forth. And before I dove into the research, I kind of was leaning one way. And then I started really going the other way for multiple reasons. And the big thing is, Overeem is a past world champion. He's got great kickboxing. He is the dog here. And there's a lot to like about that. And to me, I feel like that's what the books want you to do, in my opinion. I feel that it's the recognizable name against a name that is not recognizable. And that's where a lot of times they're going to want to scoop up that dog price. So for me in this spot here, I mean, I'm looking at it as a very bad stylistic matchup for Overeem. And Overeem has showed over his career, even over the last few fights, that he just can't handle the pressure. He's got great kickboxing, and even against Rosenstruck, when he fought him over 5 rounds, Rosenstruck gave him complete space, the exact space that Overeem wants. Rosenstruck gave it to him until the very end where he threw the big bomb and landed it. And that's something that Overeem is just not able to really, sit. He, another guy past PEDs, past steroid use, and has kind of, tilted down after that. And another thing that he does is when he pushes forward, which almost brings me back to what OSP did last night. Overeem absolutely all the time, when he's pushed forward, he ends up kind of doing this weird run away from the cage. And it almost even I know I'm getting like flashbacks of oh god, I don't want to say that guy's name anymore, but yeah, and he kind of does this weird run away, which to me, it that takes a lot away from the judging too. When you keep doing that and you're not engaging, once in a while it's okay, but you do it consistently. And also when he can't get out of those spots, he turtles up. He kind of puts his head down and allows shots to happen. A guy like Walt Harris has a lot of power. He likes to move forward, and he's a guy who's going to want to engage. So I think that, in the grappling side of things, you've got Overeem. He's good with his Muay Thai, but I really like Walt Harris here. I think that the minus 160 range that you're looking at is a good price. And again, I think this is set up. If this wasn't Alistair Overeem, I think this line would be a lot further. It's the recognizable name, a past champion, a guy in more the end of his career. Although Walt Harris is, older also, younger than Overeem, but older also, I think this is a good spot. He's shown a lot of elevation when it comes to just his striking. So I think this is a really good spot for Walt Harris here overall. So I'm taking Harris. I think the awkwardness, and anyone awkward at this point that's fighting, I'm not taking them. So I'm going with Walt Harris here.
Nice. All right. I like it, Kyle. Thank you so much for your time and for those replays. Good luck to you this Saturday. Everyone, please do not forget to check out Kyle's client plays. On wagertalk.com. He's got 3 locked and loaded for Saturday's fights. And don't forget to subscribe to Wager Talk TV here on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at Wager Talk, at Kyle Anthony UFC, and at Minty Beth. Thanks so much, guys.